The Galactic Council, a powerful alliance of countless alien species, had ruled the galaxy for centuries with unmatched dominance. With their vast fleets, ancient knowledge, and unchallenged power, they had kept the galaxy in check. Their influence extended across star systems, planets, and species, leaving little room for anyone to challenge their authority. The humans, a young species who had only recently begun to expand into the far reaches of space, were a nuisance, a mere spark in the shadows of the great galactic empire. But that spark was beginning to grow. President Celine Cray stood before a sleek holographic projection in the war room of the human command station, staring at the message from the Galactic Council. The faces of the Council's leaders appeared in the hologram, their expressions unreadable, their eyes cold. Humanity is growing too bold. One of them, a Vithar, a towering insectoid leader, spoke with a voice that sent chills through the room. Your colonies have expanded into regions we control. You are an insect, crawling where you are not welcome. The hologram flickered, showing a map of the galaxy with Earth's position marked. The Council's warning was clear: cease all expansion or face annihilation. This is your final warning. We will not hesitate to eradicate your species if you ignore our demands. Celine stood motionless, feeling the weight of the message. She knew the stakes were high, and the threat was real. The Council's fleets, with their terrifying firepower, could crush humanity in an instant. But Celine Cray was not one to bend to threats. She had seen too many in her life, too many of her people crushed by forces much bigger than themselves. She was determined not to let humanity fall under the shadow of the Council. Relay my message back to the Galactic Council, she ordered her aide. Tell them, we will not negotiate. The room fell silent as the words hung in the air. The aide hesitated but nodded, knowing full well the weight of the decision. To refuse the Council was to invite war, a war they might not win. But Celine had made her choice. She wasn't just a leader. She was a symbol of humanity's spirit. It wasn't the first time humanity had been underestimated. It had happened countless times throughout history. But it always ended the same way: humanity rising, fighting back, refusing to be silenced. The aide sent the message to the Council, and within moments, the holographic projection came to life again. The Vithar's face appeared, his expression a mix of surprise and irritation. You dare defy the Galactic Council, he hissed. Do you understand what you are doing? You have no fleet, no power to resist us. If you continue on this path, you will be wiped from existence. This is your final warning. But President Cray's voice was calm, almost serene, as she replied, we do not fear you. If war is what you want, we will give it to you. Humanity will not be cowed by threats. We would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. Prepare for the fight of your lives. The transmission ended, leaving the room filled with a tense silence. The decision had been made. There was no turning back now. In the weeks that followed, the news spread across human colonies like wildfire. People everywhere, on Earth, and in the farthest colonies, felt the weight of Celine Cray's words. Many feared the worst. They knew the power of the Galactic Council and the consequences of defying them. Yet there was a growing sense of unity. The humans, often scattered and divided, now found themselves drawn together by a common cause: survival. The challenge was clear, and the stakes were life and death. The Council, in their arrogance, had underestimated the human willpower and the potential of their collective consciousness. As the battle raged on, the Council's ships began to fall one by one. It was as though the humans were everywhere at once, attacking from multiple directions, confusing their enemies, and outsmarting them at every turn. The Council's fleet began to falter, their commanders unsure of what was happening. They could not understand how the humans were managing to evade their attacks and strike back with such precision. Meanwhile, Celine remained at the heart of the operation, her mind in constant communication with her fleet, guiding them with strategic brilliance. She could feel the power coursing through her, an energy she had never experienced before. It was as if her mind had been opened to the vastness of the galaxy itself, connected to every human who had been trained in the hidden arts. Together, they formed a unified force that the Council could not defeat. The turning point came when the humans executed a daring maneuver, one that was only possible because of their shared mental link. They lured the Council's flagship into a trap, using their collective consciousness to predict the movements of the enemy. The human ships surrounded the flagship, cutting off any escape routes, and began to focus all their firepower on its vulnerable points. The Council's flagship was heavily damaged, its shields failing under the relentless assault. At that moment, the Council realized their mistake. They had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt, to evolve, and to harness the hidden power that lay dormant within them. As the flagship's massive engines exploded, sending debris scattered through the vacuum of space, the remaining Council forces realized that the tide had turned. The humans had revealed their true strength, and there was no going back. On Earth, the victory was celebrated, but Selene knew the battle was far from over. The Council might have lost this one, but they would not give up easily. The galaxy had just witnessed the hidden power of humanity, but the humans were not done yet. They had only scratched the surface of what they were capable of, and Selene understood that the galaxy would have to reckon with humanity's true potential. They would not stop until their enemies knew the full extent of their power. The war had only just begun. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they were no longer a species to be underestimated. They had awakened a force within themselves that would continue to grow stronger with each passing day. And in the darkness of space, as the stars glimmered overhead, the hidden power of humanity had been revealed, its full force yet to be unleashed. The galaxy would soon learn that no matter how strong their enemies were, the humans would always fight for their survival, for their future, and for the truth that no one could break their will. The darkness of space was alive with chaos as the final battle began. For months, humanity had fought against the overwhelming forces of the Galactic Council. Their ships, once outnumbered and underestimated, had turned the tide, proving their strength and resolve at every turn. But now, with the Council's last and most powerful fleet on the horizon, the humans knew they were facing their greatest challenge yet. The final stand had arrived, and there was no turning back. Selene Cray stood at the helm of the United Fleet's flagship, her mind sharp, focused, and ready for the fight of her life. The Council had underestimated humanity from the start, thinking they were weak, disorganized, and incapable of withstanding such a force. But the humans had proven time and again that their strength lay not in their weapons or their technology, but in their ability to adapt, to think quickly, and to never give up. It was this very spirit that had carried them this far, and it was this same spirit that would carry them through the final battle. The Galactic Council's fleet was massive, a dark wave of warships that filled the sky, their engines glowing ominously. It was clear they had come for the last time to crush the human resistance. The Council's commanders, their eyes filled with arrogance and certainty, had no doubt that this would be their victory. They believed humanity's defenses were at their limit, that the final wave of the human fleet would break under the pressure. But they did not understand the depths of human determination. Selene had always known that humanity's greatest strength was their will to survive, a power that could never be measured by mere weapons or force. As the first shots were fired, the tension in the air was palpable. The humans moved quickly, their ships darting and weaving through the endless expanse of space. The Council's ships were large, their weapons devastating, but the humans had one advantage: their speed and maneuverability. The United Fleet's ships moved with a precision that was. The human fleet, though smaller in numbers, had a few advantages. Their ships were faster, more agile, and equipped with advanced weaponry that the Council had not expected. The human fleet was not designed for overwhelming force, but for precision, for striking where it hurt the most. They had been preparing for something like this for years, gathering intelligence, reverse engineering alien technology, and training their forces for a war they hoped would never come. But now, As the Council's fleet loomed on the horizon, that war was inevitable. As the first Council warships entered Earth's orbit, the air around Selene seemed to tighten. There was no going back now. The first salvo of plasma missiles from the Council ships lit up the sky, a flash of terrifying energy. Humanity's fleet, in response, fired back with their own weapons, their smaller, quicker ships darting between the larger, slower Council vessels. The explosions were deafening, the sound of the battle shaking the very ground beneath them. But despite the chaos, the humans remained focused, their tactics designed to confuse and disrupt the enemy. "Target their engines," Admiral Rook ordered, his voice steady. "If we can disable their mobility, they'll be sitting ducks." The human ships, small but nimble, darted in and out of the Council's formation, launching precision strikes against the vulnerable points of the alien ships. The Council's vessels, large and imposing, were not built for this kind of warfare. Their size made them easy targets for the faster human ships that seemed to appear from nowhere, strike, and disappear just as quickly. But the Council was not without its own advantages. Their ships were equipped with energy shields, advanced weapons, and a terrifying fleet of drones. As the battle raged on, the Council's numbers began to overwhelm the human defenders. One by one, human ships were destroyed, their debris scattering into space. Yet each time a ship fell, another would take its place. The human resolve was unwavering, their determination stronger than ever. President Cray watched the battle unfold on the massive screens, her face a mask of determination. She knew the odds were against them, but she had always believed in the strength of humanity. The Council may have the numbers, but humanity had something else. They had something that could not be measured in the number of ships or the strength of weapons: human ingenuity. The ability to adapt, to think on their feet, to surprise their enemies in ways that no one expected. This would be their greatest weapon. As the hours passed, the battle grew more intense. The sky above Earth was lit up with explosions, the debris of destroyed ships drifting in every direction. On the ground, people watched the fight unfold in real time, their hearts racing as they saw their fleet struggling to hold its ground. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, the humans did not falter. They fought with everything they had, refusing to give in. The Council was powerful, but the humans were not the helpless species they thought them to be. They were not simply going to roll over and die. The Council's leaders, watching from their command center in space, began to realize that this was not the easy victory they had expected. The humans were more resilient, more resourceful than they had anticipated. They had no intention of bowing to anyone, and their refusal to surrender was becoming a serious problem for the Council's carefully laid plans. "They fight like cornered animals," one of the Council members said, his voice filled with disbelief. "This will not be easy. We must crush them, or they will become a threat to us all." But the more the Council tried to regroup, the more chaotic the situation became. Their fleet was now scattered, unable to coordinate effectively as the humans struck from all directions. It was as if the humans had anticipated every move, countering with tactics that were as unpredictable as they were effective. The Council's ships began to fall one by one, their shields failing against the relentless attacks from the human fleet. On the surface of Earth, Selene Cray stood before her generals, watching the battle unfold. She knew that the Council would not stop. They would send more forces, they would bring reinforcements, but the humans would fight on. There was no choice now. They had made their stand, and they would see it through. "Prepare for the next wave," she ordered, her voice unwavering. "We will not stop until they understand that humanity will never be silenced." But just as the human forces began to regroup, a new threat emerged. The Council, realizing that their initial attack had failed to break the humans, unleashed their secret weapon, a massive superweapon capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single blast. It was a weapon unlike anything humanity had ever seen, a massive laser that could cut through anything in its path. As it powered up, the human fleet, now on the defensive, had no way of stopping it. The Council's victory seemed inevitable. But President Cray was not one to give up so easily. She watched as the weapon powered up, her mind racing. In a moment of inspiration, she realized there was only one way to stop it. The human fleet needed to sacrifice their remaining ships to disable the weapon. It was a risky move, one that could cost them everything, but it was their only option. All remaining ships, Celine's voice rang out, clear and commanding. Engage the superweapon. Do not hold back. We fight for our future. The remaining human ships, battered and bruised but still fighting, launched a desperate assault on the superweapon. The explosion of their final attack shook the very fabric of space, a blinding flash of light that consumed the superweapon and sent shockwaves through the Council's fleet. The weapon was destroyed, but at a great cost. The human fleet was now a shadow of its former self, most of the ships gone, their crews sacrificed in the name of survival. As the Council's remaining forces retreated, President Cray allowed herself a brief moment of relief. The humans had held their ground, but the battle was far from over. The Council had learned something important that day. Humanity was not a species to be underestimated. It had taken everything they had to make it this far, but they would not stop. The response had been sent, loud and clear. The war had just begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first battle was like nothing the galaxy had ever witnessed before. For centuries, the races of the Galactic Council had dominated the stars, their fleets always superior, their strength unmatched. But when humanity made its stand, everything changed. The Council had expected easy victories. The humans, after all, were a young species, just a speck in the vastness of space. They had no idea that this seemingly insignificant species would ignite a fire that could challenge the might of the galaxy's most powerful empire. It all began when the first wave of the Council's ships entered Earth's atmosphere. They arrived in a silent, imposing formation, a fleet of massive warships with shields and weapons designed to obliterate anything in their path. The Council's leadership believed that once they showed their might, humanity would cower, beg for mercy, and agree to whatever terms they laid out. But they underestimated the one thing that no other species in the galaxy had: the human spirit. President Celine Cray, leader of Earth's unified forces, stared out of the window of her command center. Her eyes locked on the fleet on the screens before her, the darkness of space filled with the cold, metallic shapes of the Council's ships. They were vast and terrifying, and at that moment, it felt as though the entire galaxy was closing in on her. But Celine's resolve never wavered. She knew that if humanity was to survive, they would have to fight. There could be no other way. The human fleet, though outnumbered, was prepared. The ships were smaller, more agile, designed not for direct confrontation, but for precision. They had reverse-engineered some alien technology and adapted their weapons for quick, devastating strikes. Their ships lacked the immense power of the Council's warships, but they made up for it with speed, stealth, and an unrelenting will to survive. Admiral Rook, ready the fleet, Celine commanded, her voice steady, betraying none of the fear she felt. She turned to face the room of commanders and strategists gathered around her. We may be outnumbered, but we are not weak. We will not give them the victory so easily. The galaxy needs to know that humanity does not bow to anyone. Rook nodded grimly. Mom, we'll show them what we're made of. The moment was electric with tension as the first volley of plasma missiles shot across the vastness of space, lighting up the dark void between Earth and the invading fleet. The Council's ships responded instantly, firing back with devastating force. The sound of battle filled the room, even though it was far away, almost unreal. But the humans had prepared for this. Each ship knew its role. They swarmed the Council's ships, moving like bees, darting in and out of the larger warship's fire range, hitting targets of opportunity with pinpoint accuracy. The first explosion from the human side came when a human ship, the Vanguard, fired a missile that hit one of the Council's battle cruisers dead center. The impact shook the surrounding ships, and for a moment, it seemed like the impossible had happened. The Vanguard disappeared into a cloud of debris, but its sacrifice had crippled the Council ship. It had been a small victory, but it was enough to send a shockwave through the Council's fleet. The Council's commanders were not used to fighting like this. They had never encountered a species that fought with such desperation, such ingenuity. Their fleets were massive and powerful, but the humans knew how to exploit weaknesses, how to strike when the enemy least expected it. As the first hour of the battle unfolded, the Council began to feel the pressure. Their ships were losing power, their shields faltering against the unrelenting attacks from the human fleet. Meanwhile, on Earth, the battle's outcome seemed uncertain. The sky was alive with flashes of light as both fleets clashed above the planet's surface. People looked up in fear, unsure whether they would ever see the stars again. It was impossible to tell how long the battle would last. Every second felt like an eternity, and each moment brought the two sides closer to total destruction. But humanity's resilience proved stronger than even the Council had anticipated. They had no desire to die. They fought for survival, for the future of their species. It was something the Council had not considered. The species they had written off as primitive and weak turned out to be the very thing that would pose the greatest threat to their reign. Every ship that fell, every life lost, only fueled the humans' determination. As the battle raged on, the Vanguard's explosion marked the first of many sacrifices. One by one, human ships fell, their destruction a testament to their courage. But each loss only made the human fleet more determined. The battle seemed to grow more chaotic by the minute, with ships darting in all directions, their energy weapons flashing in every color imaginable. It was an intense spectacle of light and sound, a dance of death in the void of space. The Council, realizing the unpredictability of the humans' tactics, attempted to regroup. They called in reinforcements, massive dreadnoughts that were designed to crush anything in their path. But the humans were ready. In a bold last-ditch move, they launched a coordinated attack on the Council's reinforcements, concentrating their fire on the enemy's weakest link. The battle was now a desperate fight for survival on both sides. As the reinforcements arrived, the humans made their move. The last remaining human ships, battered but unbroken, engaged the Council's dreadnoughts. The space around Earth became a battlefield, with explosions rippling outward from the massive ships. The human ships darted between the Council's lines, targeting vulnerable spots. For every dreadnought that fell, the humans gained ground, forcing the Council to rethink their strategy. In the midst of the battle, Celine Cray's voice echoed through the command center. Focus fire on their lead ship. Take down their command center. Without it, they'll crumble. Her orders were clear, and the remaining human ships surged forward, focusing their energy on the largest Council warship. It was a gamble, but one that could change everything. As the human fleet concentrated its fire, the massive Council ship began to falter. Its shields failed, its systems overloaded. The humans pressed on, never relenting. Then, with a final, earth-shaking explosion, the lead Council warship detonated, taking out a good portion of the fleet in the process. It was a victory, but it came at a high cost. The human fleet was shattered. Only a handful of ships remained intact, and the survivors were battered, their hulls scorched and torn from the brutal engagement. But despite the heavy losses, humanity had made its mark on the galaxy. They had shown the Council that they were not just a minor threat to be wiped away, but a species willing to do whatever it took to survive. In the aftermath of the first battle, as the dust settled and the surviving ships returned to Earth, a silence fell over the human fleet. They had won, but the cost had been steep. The people of Earth had given everything to protect their home, and they mistake again. And the galaxy would remember the day when a small, insignificant species had taken its first stand in the face of certain annihilation. The first battle was over, but the war was just beginning. Humanity had sent a message that would echo across the stars for years to come. They were not to be underestimated. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the Council had just learned the hard way. The battle for Earth was won, but the fight for the future had only just begun. The galaxy had long underestimated humanity. To the members of the Galactic Council, humans were an enigma. Primitive, emotional, and far too young in their technological development to be considered a true threat. The Council's fleets had been undefeated for centuries, crushing any species that dared to resist them. But there was one thing they didn't know, something that humanity kept hidden for centuries, a power they had not yet unleashed. It wasn't their weapons, their ships, or their technology that made them dangerous. It was something far deeper, something buried within their very nature. President Celine Cray had always known that humanity's true strength wasn't in the size of their ships or the might of their guns. It was in their ability to adapt, to endure, and to fight against overwhelming odds. But even she couldn't have predicted just how far this hidden power would take them. When the Galactic Council's ultimatum arrived, offering the humans a chance to submit or face annihilation, Celine knew they could not afford to show weakness. The Council believed they had humanity cornered, but they had no idea what was about to happen. The humans had learned to fight not only with advanced technology, but with sheer willpower. They were not the first to be oppressed by the Council, nor would they be the last. However, something unique about humanity set them apart. While other species would either surrender or perish, humans had an extraordinary ability to rise from the ashes. They could fight through their losses, adapt to challenges faster than any other species, and most importantly, they refused to accept defeat. This was the hidden power, the unyielding will to survive, no matter the odds. As the first wave of the Council's ships entered Earth's orbit, humanity's fleet was already in position. It was a desperate stand. No one knew if they would survive the coming battle. But Celine had a plan. She had kept humanity's true strength a secret, even from her closest advisors. Only a handful knew of the experiment conducted on Earth years ago, one that had given humanity an edge the Council could never have predicted. Through the study of ancient, forgotten alien texts and technologies, humanity had unlocked the potential to harness the full capacity of their minds. It started with the genetic modifications that had been made in secret. Certain humans had been altered, their brains rewired to access hidden capabilities. The results were unpredictable at first. Some subjects gained extraordinary mental abilities, such as telepathy, telekinesis, and heightened intelligence. These modifications, however, were only the beginning. Over time, they had developed a connection, a shared mental network that allowed humans to communicate and coordinate on a level never seen before in any species. Celine knew the Council would never suspect it. They saw humans as weak, emotional beings, incapable of coordinating such a complex operation. What they didn't realize was that the humans had been preparing for this day, training their minds, developing strategies, and tapping into the hidden power of their collective consciousness. When the battle began, the Council's fleets launched an immediate assault, expecting the humans to fold under the pressure. Their massive warships fired powerful energy blasts, lighting up the sky with every strike. The human ships, though smaller and more vulnerable, moved with precision. They darted between the Council's ships, avoiding their fire, launching counterattacks with uncanny accuracy. The battle seemed like a hopeless cause at first, but then something changed. Celine and her team on Earth began to channel their hidden power. Through the shared mental connection, they could feel each other's thoughts, each other's strategies. The humans were no longer fighting as individuals. They were one, connected by a bond stronger than any weapon. They could anticipate each other's moves, coordinate attacks in real time, and even manipulate their surroundings with their minds. The telepathic link between them made them a formidable force, something the Council had never encountered before. They could control the battlefield in ways that defied all logic. The Council, infuriated by humanity's defiance, quickly mobilized its fleets. Ships from across the galaxy, each more advanced and powerful than anything humanity had ever seen, began to gather in the space around Earth. They were vast, numerous, and ready for war. For every human ship in space, there were hundreds of Council vessels. The Council had one goal: destroy humanity and erase any trace of their existence. President Cray watched as the fleet assembled. She stood in the command center, her mind racing. Her thoughts were clear. She had no intention of surrendering. They might not have the numbers or the firepower to win, but humanity had something the Council didn't. They had ingenuity. They had determination. And most of all, they had the will to fight for their freedom. If the Council thought they could crush humanity so easily, they were gravely mistaken. Humanity's fleet, though smaller in number, had something else: advanced technology that the Council had never encountered before. The humans had spent decades studying ancient alien artifacts, scavenging technology from forgotten ruins, and learning from their past mistakes. They had weapons that could destabilize entire fleets, stealth technology that made their ships nearly invisible, and strategies that were more unpredictable than the Council could fathom. The humans weren't just going to roll over. They were going to make the Council regret ever underestimating them. As the first wave of Council ships arrived near Earth, the battle began. The Council expected a swift victory, but as their ships engaged humanity's forces, they were met with resistance unlike any they had ever seen. The human fleet, though smaller, moved with precision, attacking in unexpected ways, exploiting weaknesses in the Council's formations. The first clash was brutal. The Council's ships, large and imposing, were slowed by the relentless attacks of the smaller human vessels. The humans used hit-and-run tactics, striking with precision and then disappearing before the Council could retaliate. The Galactic Council, realizing that the humans were not as weak as they had believed, attempted to regroup. But every time they thought they had a clear advantage, another unexpected attack would occur, throwing them off balance. The human fleet fought not just with advanced weapons, but with cunning strategies that kept the Council on the defensive. It wasn't the kind of war the Council was used to, and it threw them into disarray. For Celine Cray, this was only the beginning. The humans had proven they could hold their own, but this was just the first wave. The Council would send more. They would bring more powerful forces to bear, but humanity would continue to fight. They would never surrender, never submit. They had drawn a line in the sand, and they were ready to defend it with everything they had. The war had begun, and the humans had made one thing clear: they would not go down without a fight. As the battle raged on, President Cray's voice echoed in the minds of every human soldier, every fleet commander. "We will not negotiate," she had said. "We will not bow to them." And with every passing moment, the humans were proving that the Council's worst mistake was underestimating them. The battle for the galaxy had just begun, and humanity would fight to the very last breath. The Galactic Council's response to humanity's defiance was swift and ruthless. No sooner had President Celine Cray sent her message declaring humanity's refusal to negotiate than the Council began assembling its fleets. The message was clear: the humans would either submit to their rule or be wiped from existence. There would be no middle ground. The Council had never believed that a species so young, so small in the grand scheme of the galaxy, would dare to challenge them. But now, humanity had crossed the line, and they would pay the price. In the command center on Earth, Celine Cray stood alone in front of a massive screen that displayed the incoming fleet of the Galactic Council. The room was silent, the only sound the hum of the equipment around her. Her mind raced, calculating the odds, weighing every possibility. She knew the Council was not just sending a fleet. They were sending everything they had: their warships, their fighters, their most powerful weapons. They had no intention of leaving anything to chance. "Admiral Rook," she said, her voice calm but carrying a weight of finality, "prepare our fleet. We will not run. We will not hide. We will fight." Admiral Rook, standing behind her, gave a firm nod. He had been with Celine through countless crises, and though this situation was unlike any they had ever faced, he trusted her instincts. He knew that humanity had no choice now but to stand and fight. Celine's voice came over the comms, calm yet resolute. "Hold the line. We can do this. Humanity's survival depends on us. Trust in each other. Trust in what we've become." Across the vast battlefield, every human ship, from the smallest to the largest, moved in harmony. They communicated through a shared mental network, allowing them to anticipate each other's moves and react in an instant. Their mental connection had been growing stronger with every battle, and now it was at its peak. The power of their unity was undeniable. The humans had tapped into something more than just advanced technology. They had tapped into their collective will, their collective strength. It was this connection that allowed them to face a foe far more powerful than themselves without flinching. The battle raged on, the sound of explosions and the glow of energy blasts lighting up the endless void of space. The Council's ships were massive, but the humans used their smaller, more agile vessels to outmaneuver them at every turn. It was a dance of destruction, each ship taking its place in the battle with military precision. The humans had learned to anticipate the Council's strategies, to outthink them at every moment. It was this unpredictability that kept the Council on edge, unsure of how to react. Celine watched as one of the enemy ships exploded into a ball of fire and debris. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. They were starting to make progress, but the Council's forces were still overwhelming. The odds were against them, and Celine knew that the humans could not afford to make a single mistake. But even with their backs against the wall, there was no fear in Celine's eyes. She had seen the human spirit at its strongest. She had seen it in the way they had fought for their survival, in the way they had never given up. No matter how dire the situation had seemed, humanity had always found a way to overcome the impossible. As the battle continued, the Council's flagship, a massive dreadnought, moved forward, its weapons charging for the final strike. The flagship was the most powerful ship in the galaxy, and its destruction would be the end of humanity's hopes for survival. Celine's heart raced. She knew that if they couldn't take down that ship, the war would be lost. The humans had no more time. This was their final chance. With a deep breath, she gave the order. "Target the dreadnought's core," she commanded. "All ships, converge on that target." The human ships split, weaving through the battlefield like a swarm of hornets. They moved as one, each ship coordinating with the others in perfect unison. The dreadnought's shields were too strong to penetrate directly, but the humans knew that their greatest strength lay in their ability to outthink and outmaneuver their enemies. They would not simply brute force their way to victory. Instead, they would use their minds, their instincts, and their unity to find a way. As the human fleet closed in on the flagship, Celine could feel the connection between her and her crew members. It was almost as if she could see the battlefield through their eyes, feel the heat of the explosions, hear the roar of the weapons. They were one mind, one will, united by a single purpose. Their strategy was simple. They would attack the flagship from every angle, distracting it long enough for one final strike to reach its core. The dreadnought fired, its massive energy beams slicing through the darkness of space, but the humans were already moving, already anticipating its every move. They dodged, weaving between the beams, closing in. The Council was desperate now, trying to regroup, but it was too late. The humans had outsmarted them, outmaneuvered them, and they were about to deliver the final blow. With a surge of energy, Celine's fleet launched a concentrated strike at the dreadnought's weak point, a vulnerability they had discovered through months of studying the ship's design. The blast hit the core, and for a moment, everything stood still. The dreadnought's engines faltered, then exploded, sending a shockwave through the battlefield. The rest of the Council's fleet hesitated, unsure of what to do next. It was over. The humans had done the impossible. The Galactic Council, the most powerful force in the galaxy, had been defeated by a species they had thought weak and insignificant. Humanity had proven its strength, its resilience, and its will to survive. As Celine watched the remnants of the Council's fleet retreat into the distance, she knew that this was not just a victory for Earth. It was a victory for every species that had ever fought for their freedom, for their survival. The final stand had been humanity's last chance, and they had emerged victorious. But Celine knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had been forever changed, and humanity's place in it had been solidified. The final stand had proven that no matter how powerful the enemy, no matter the odds, humanity would always find a way to fight back. The story of their survival would echo across the stars, a testament to the strength of the human spirit.